The slam of his office door echoed like thunder across the penthouse suite, startling Vincent Quinn from his concentrated review of quarterly reports. His steel-gray eyes lifted to find his assistant, Gregory, standing nervously in the doorway with an apologetic grimace. "Mr. Quinn, I'm sorry for the interruption, but the new organizational consultant is here for your 10 o'clock. Vincent's jaw tightened. He'd forgotten about this meeting, another pointless initiative from his board of directors, who seemed convinced that reorganizing office furniture would somehow boost productivity. At 34, Vincent had built Quinn Enterprises from nothing into a billion-dollar tech empire, yet his board still treated him like he needed babysitters. Send them away, reschedule. Vincent waved a dismissive hand, returning to his reports. "Sir," Gregory hesitated, lowering his voice, "the board chairman specifically asked for your personal involvement. After the incident last month." The incident. Vincent's knuckles whitened around his pen. One momentary loss of control during a board meeting, flipping a table and walking out when they'd suggested selling off the humanitarian division, and suddenly he was labeled unstable and still dealing with past trauma. "Fine," Vincent muttered. 5 minutes. Gregory nodded and disappeared, returning moments later with a young woman who walked into Vincent's office with confident strides. Vincent barely glanced up until she spoke. "Mr. Quinn, I'm Olivia Hayes. Thank you for making time in your schedule." Something in her voice, warm but authoritative, made him look up, and what he saw made him almost forget his annoyance. Olivia Hayes stood before him in a tailored navy suit that complemented her athletic frame, shoulder-length auburn hair framing a face with intelligent green eyes that assessed him without a trace of intimidation. "Miss Hayes." Vincent rose mechanically, offering a stiff handshake across his desk. Her grip was firm, her hand surprisingly warm. "I'll be blunt, I think this is a waste of time. My company is doing fine." Olivia didn't flinch at his coldness. "With respect, Mr. Quinn, if everything was fine, I wouldn't be here." She set her leather portfolio on his desk. "Your board is concerned about employee retention, departmental communication, and—" She paused, eyeing him directly. "Executive stress management." Vincent's expression hardened. "I don't discuss my personal matters. I'm not here as a therapist, Mr. Quinn. I'm here as an efficiency expert." She opened her portfolio, revealing a company analysis that made Vincent's eyebrows rise slightly. "Your tech innovations are revolutionary, but your corporate structure is stuck in 1995. You're losing talent to competitors who offer more collaborative environments." Grudgingly impressed by her preparation, Vincent gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "You have 15 minutes. That 15 minutes stretched to 45 as Olivia outlined her observations about Quinn Enterprises with razor-sharp precision. She'd done her homework, identifying inefficiencies Vincent himself had noticed but hadn't addressed. Worse, she seemed immune to his intimidation tactics, meeting his challenges with data, his sarcasm with professionalism, and his dismissals with well-reasoned arguments. "So," Vincent finally said, leaning back in his chair, "what exactly do you propose?" "A 3-month restructuring program. I'll need office space here, access to department heads, and weekly meetings with you." When Vincent started to object, she continued, "Or you can explain to your board why you rejected their solution without offering an alternative." Vincent studied her. Most people who came into contact with him wanted something: his money, his influence, a piece of his success. But Olivia Hayes seemed to want only to do her job and do it well. It was refreshing, fine. "You can have the empty office next to Gregory. Weekly meetings, 30 minutes max." He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. "Gregory will get you set up." Olivia gathered her materials, a small smile playing at her lips. "I look forward to working with you, Mr. Quinn." "Don't," Vincent replied. "I'm not known for being easy to work with. Good thing I don't scare easily." With that, she turned and walked out, leaving Vincent with the strange sensation that his carefully controlled world had just tilted slightly on its axis. The next morning, Vincent arrived at his office earlier than usual, hoping to avoid running into the new consultant. He wasn't prepared to find her already installed in the adjacent office, surrounded by organizational charts and typing furiously on her laptop. "Morning, Mr. Quinn," she called when he passed her open door. Vincent paused, annoyed at being caught in his avoidance tactic. "You're here early." "Always am," she replied without looking up. "I noticed your calendar is clear until 10. Could I get 15 minutes to discuss department integration? I'm busy." "With what?" Vincent blinked, unused to being questioned. "Important CEO things." This time Olivia did look up, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Of course, how about during lunch?" "I don't do lunch meetings." "Dinner then, Miss Hayes," Vincent said sharply. "I agreed to 30 minutes once a week, not daily harassment." Olivia finally stopped typing and gave him her full attention. "Mr. Quinn, I have 12 weeks to overhaul a corporate culture that took years to develop. Efficiency requires frequency. But if you prefer, I can conduct my analysis without your input and implement changes based solely on what I observe." The threat was clear. Vincent crossed his arms. "Fine, 10 minutes, my office, now." During those 10 minutes, Olivia presented a concise plan for department restructuring that would eliminate 3 layers of unnecessary management. Vincent found himself nodding along, impressed despite himself by her insight. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked as their time ended. "Harvard Business School, followed by 5 years at a consulting firm in New York," she answered, gathering her notes. "Then I started my own company 2 years ago." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Why work for yourself when you could command a hefty salary at any Fortune 500? For the first time, something vulnerable flashed in Olivia's eyes. "Let's just say I had my fill of corporate politics. I prefer setting my own terms." There was a story there. Vincent realized one that resonated with his own reasons for building Quinn Enterprises. But before he could ask, Olivia was already heading for the door. "I'll have the first department assessment on your desk tomorrow morning," she said, her professional mask firmly back in place. Vincent spent the rest of the day distracted, his mind returning to that moment of vulnerability he'd glimpsed. It bothered him that he was curious about her. Curiosity about people led to caring, and caring led to pain, a lesson he'd learned at tremendous cost. Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia became a fixture at Quinn Enterprises. Employees who initially viewed her with suspicion were won over by her respectful approach and genuine interest in their work. Vincent found her reports thorough, her recommendations sound, and her presence increasingly difficult to ignore. Their weekly meetings extended from 30 minutes to an hour, then 2. Vincent caught himself looking forward to their debates, to the way she challenged his thinking without undermining his authority. She was the first person in years who treated him as Vincent, not as the billionaire Mr. Quinn who'd survived tragedy to build an empire. One evening, Vincent was working late when he heard a crash from Olivia's office. He found her attempting to move a heavy filing cabinet, a toppled lamp at her feet. "What are you doing?" he demanded, taking in the disarray of her usually organized space. "Reorganizing," she said, slightly breathless. "I can't expect the company to change if I can't optimize my own workspace." Vincent shook his head and moved to help her, easily sliding the cabinet where she indicated. "You know we have maintenance staff for this. They went home hours ago. Besides, I don't mind doing things myself." Vincent found himself studying her face, the determination in her eyes, the slight flush in her cheeks from exertion, the wisps of auburn hair escaping her usually neat bun. "Why are you still here at 9 p.m. anyway?" Olivia shrugged. "Work to do." "Same as you. I own the company. What's your excuse?" "I don't need an excuse to be dedicated to my job," she said, straightening some fallen files. Then, more softly, "and sometimes an empty apartment isn't much incentive to leave." The admission hung in the air between them, unexpectedly personal. Vincent knew he should nod and leave, maintain the professional distance he'd cultivated with everyone in his life. Instead, he heard himself say, "Have you had dinner?" Olivia looked up, surprise evident. "No, I was going to grab something on the way home. There's a Thai place around the corner that delivers. I was about to order." 20 minutes later, they sat in his office surrounded by containers of pad Thai and green curry, their conversation drifting from work to more personal territory. Vincent learned that Olivia had grown up in Seattle, the daughter of two high school teachers who'd instilled in her a fierce work ethic. She'd put herself through college and business school with scholarships and part-time jobs. "What about you?" she asked, reaching for another spring roll. The Vincent Quinn story is pretty well known, but I suspect the reality is different from the legend. Vincent tensed. His story was indeed well known, the young tech prodigy who'd lost his parents and sister in a plane crash 10 years ago, then channeled his grief into building Quinn Enterprises. The press loved the narrative of the tragic, driven genius who turned personal loss into business success. "Not much to tell beyond what you've read," he said dismissively. Olivia studied him, then nodded, respecting his boundary. "Well, the Quinn Enterprises I'm getting to know is impressive. Your employees are passionate about their work, even if they're terrified of you. They should be. I have high standards. High standards don't require fear. Respect works better," says the woman who's been here 2 weeks. Says the woman who's interviewed 63 of your employees, all of whom would walk through fire for you despite being scared to ride the elevator with you. Vincent almost smiled. "You've interviewed 63 people already?" 65 now, I work fast." Olivia wiped her hands on a napkin, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "You know what's interesting? They all say the same thing, that you're brilliant but distant, demanding but fair. And every single one mentioned your humanitarian division as proof that beneath the tough exterior you actually care." Vincent's face darkened. "That division isn't about caring, it's good business. Tech that helps people sells. Right. That's why you nearly flipped a table when the board suggested selling it off." When Vincent's eyes widened, she shrugged. "People talk. You shouldn't believe everything you hear." "I don't. That's why I observe." Olivia leaned forward. "And I've observed a man who works 18-hour days, demands perfection from everyone including himself, and funnels millions into developing technology for disaster relief and medical applications with minimal profit margins. Those aren't the actions of someone who doesn't care." Vincent stood abruptly, gathering the empty food containers. "It's getting late. I should let you go home." Olivia recognized the dismissal and stood, collecting her things. At the door, she paused. "Thank you for dinner, Vincent." It was the first time she'd used his first name. It shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. "Good night, Olivia," he replied, the taste of her name unfamiliar on his tongue. After she left, Vincent stood at his office window, gazing out at the Seattle skyline, unsettled by how easily she'd seen through the carefully constructed walls he'd built around himself. Worse, part of him wanted her to keep looking. The following weeks brought a shift in their dynamic. Their professional relationship remained intact. Olivia continued her assessment, implementing changes that were already showing positive results, but something personal had awakened between them. Vincent found himself seeking her opinion on matters beyond her consultancy, walking by her office more often than necessary, finding excuses to extend their meetings. Employees noticed. Gregory, who'd worked for Vincent for 7 years, actually raised an eyebrow when Vincent asked him to invite Olivia to join a product development meeting she'd normally have no reason to attend. "Is Miss Hayes expanding her role, sir?" Gregory asked innocently. "Her input would be valuable," Vincent replied stiffly. "Of course, sir. And should I order lunch for the meeting? Perhaps from that Thai place you both seem to enjoy." Vincent glared at his assistant. "Just schedule the meeting, Gregory." Later that week, Olivia knocked on Vincent's office door looking troubled. "We need to talk about the technology division restructuring." Vincent gestured for her to take a seat. "What's the problem?" "I've identified significant redundancies. Implementing my recommendations would mean eliminating 23 positions. So, we eliminate positions all the time. Yes, but these are good people doing solid work. They're just caught in an inefficient system. Olivia slid a folder across his desk. I have an alternative proposal. Reassign them to the humanitarian division, which is actually understaffed based on its current projects. They'd need retraining, but it would retain valuable talent and potentially accelerate your disaster response technology development. Vincent studied her proposal, impressed by the elegance of the solution. More than that, he was struck by her insight into what would matter to him. Most consultants would have recommended layoffs without a second thought. It was cleaner, more efficient. But Olivia had understood that, beneath his ruthless business exterior, he did care about his people. This is good, he admitted. Very good. Olivia's face brightened. Really, you'll implement it? Yes, draft the transition plan and we'll review it Monday. As she gathered her notes, Vincent found himself asking, would you like to discuss it further over dinner tonight? Olivia paused, her expression cautious. Dinner? Yes, dinner. The meal people typically eat in the evening, Vincent said, attempting humor to mask his sudden nervousness. I know what dinner is, she replied with a small smile. I just want to be clear, is this a working dinner or, Vincent said quietly, surprising himself with his directness. Olivia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'd like that. That evening, Vincent took Olivia to a small, exclusive restaurant overlooking Puget Sound. Away from the office, dressed in a simple black dress rather than her usual business attire, Olivia seemed both familiar and new to him. The conversation flowed easily, moving from work to books, films, their shared love of hiking the Pacific Northwest trails. So why organizational consulting? Vincent asked as they shared a dessert. With your skills, you could do anything. Olivia took a moment before answering. I spent 5 years at Lancaster and Porter in New York. Fast-tracked to junior partner, youngest in the firm's history. Impressive? I thought so too, until I discovered the firm was using my analyses to gut companies for short-term profit, destroying lives in the process. Her expression darkened. The final straw was a manufacturing company in Ohio. I recommended targeted efficiencies that would have saved jobs while improving productivity. My boss took my report and twisted it into justification for moving the entire operation offshore. 300 people lost their livelihoods. Vincent watched her face as she spoke, seeing the genuine pain there. So you quit? I quit, started my own consultancy and promised myself I'd only work with companies where I could create positive change. She looked up at him. Like Quinn Enterprises. Despite its difficult CEO, a smile touched her lips. The CEO has his moments. The drive back to her apartment was comfortably quiet, the city lights reflecting off the water as they crossed Lake Union. When they arrived, Vincent walked her to her door, suddenly feeling like a teenager on his first date rather than a billionaire CEO. I had a good time, Olivia said, keys in hand. Thank you, so did I. Vincent hesitated, then added, I don't do this often. Date consultants, she teased. Date anyone, he admitted. My life hasn't had room for it. Olivia studied him with those perceptive green eyes. Everyone has room for connection, Vincent. Some of us just build walls to convince ourselves otherwise. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Good night. As Vincent drove home, he touched the spot where her lips had been, realizing with startling clarity that Olivia Hayes had somehow slipped past defenses he'd spent a decade perfecting. Their relationship evolved cautiously over the following weeks. They maintained professionalism at the office, but began spending evenings and weekends together hiking Mount Rainier, exploring Pike Place Market, cooking dinner at Vincent's waterfront penthouse. To Vincent's surprise, he found himself talking about things he never discussed: his parents' unwavering support of his early interest in technology, his sister Eliza's infectious laugh, the weight of losing them all at once. You have any photos of them? Olivia asked one evening as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset. Vincent hesitated, then went inside, returning with a silver frame he kept in his bedroom. It showed the four of them on a family vacation to Yellowstone, his father with his arm around his mother, 16-year-old Vincent pretending to be annoyed while 12-year-old Eliza made bunny ears behind his head. "They look wonderful," Olivia said softly, tracing the image with her fingertip. "You have your father's eyes and your mother's determination." "How would you know about my mother's determination?" Vincent asked, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Any woman who raised you would have needed an extraordinary amount of it," Olivia replied, earning a genuine laugh from Vincent. That night, when he kissed her for the first time, it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been before. But as their personal relationship deepened, their professional situation grew more complicated. Olivia's consultancy was nearing its end, with most of her recommendations already implemented. Employee satisfaction had improved, departmental communication was more efficient, and even the board was pleased with the changes. Success meant their professional reason for seeing each other daily would soon disappear. The issue came to a head during a board meeting where Olivia presented her final assessment. Her presentation was flawless, detailing the improvements already realized and projecting future benefits. The board members were visibly impressed, particularly the chairman, Howard Prescott. "Miss Hayes, this is exemplary work," Prescott said when she finished. "We'd like to discuss extending your contract for another 6 months, perhaps in a more permanent capacity as head of organizational development." Vincent, who'd been quietly proud of Olivia's presentation, suddenly felt cold. A permanent position would mean a permanent conflict of interest. Their personal relationship would have to end, or at least become public and subject to corporate scrutiny. Olivia's eyes briefly met his before she addressed Prescott. "That's very flattering, Mr. Prescott. May I have some time to consider the offer?" "Of course. Let's reconnect next week." After the meeting, Vincent waited until they were alone in his office before speaking. "You should take the position." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "What?" "It's a good opportunity. Quinn Enterprises would be lucky to have you permanently." "Vincent, if I take a permanent position here, we can't, I know." His voice was flat, his expression closed off. Olivia studied him, hurt and confusion dawning in her eyes. "So that's it. Just like that, you're ending this." "I'm being realistic. Office relationships are messy. They lead to complications, conflicts of interest, gossip." "That's not what this is about," Olivia said quietly. "This is about you being afraid." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I'm not afraid, I'm practical." "You're terrified of letting anyone get close enough that losing them would hurt like losing your family did." Her voice was gentle, but her words cut deep. "You've built this company as a monument to their memory, but you've been using it as a shield to a reason to keep everyone at arm's length." "That's not true," Vincent snapped, but the defensiveness in his tone betrayed him. "Isn't it? You work constantly, you avoid real connections, you've convinced yourself that caring is a weakness." Olivia stepped closer. "But Vincent, caring is what makes your work meaningful. It's why your humanitarian division exists. It's why your employees would walk through fire for you despite your gruff exterior." Vincent turned away, facing the window to hide the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Olivia said, her voice breaking slightly. "I understand that you'd rather push me away than risk loving me and losing me, but that's not living, Vincent, that's just existing." When he didn't respond, she sighed. "I won't take the position. I'll finish my contract and go." "You won't have to worry about complications." The sound of his office door closing behind her felt like a physical blow. Vincent stood motionless, staring out at the Seattle skyline as darkness fell, feeling the walls he'd built around himself both protecting and suffocating him. 3 days passed with Vincent and Olivia maintaining a strictly professional distance. The office felt the tension, with employees exchanging worried glances whenever the two passed each other in the hallway with stiff nods. Vincent buried himself in work, staying later than usual, trying to ignore the emptiness that seemed to have taken residence in his chest. On the fourth day, Gregory entered his office with an envelope. "Miss Hayes asked me to deliver this." Inside was a formal letter declining the board's offer of permanent employment, along with notice that she'd completed her contracted obligations and would be departing at the end of the week. Professional, courteous, and final, Vincent read it twice, then set it down carefully on his desk. Where is she now? In her office, packing her things. Her flight to Boston leaves tomorrow morning. Apparently, she's been offered a position at MIT's business school, Boston, across the country. The thought hit Vincent with unexpected force. "Is there anything else, sir?" Gregory asked when Vincent remained silent. "No. Thank you, Gregory." After his assistant left, Vincent picked up the framed photo of his family that now sat on his desk, a small but significant change he'd made after sharing it with Olivia. His father had always told him that true courage wasn't about taking risks in business, but about being brave enough to live fully, despite knowing that loss was inevitable. For 10 years, Vincent had convinced himself that shutting out the possibility of love was strength. Looking at his family's smiling faces, he suddenly saw it for what it really was: fear disguised as practicality. His decision made, Vincent stood and walked purposefully to Olivia's office. He found her surrounded by boxes, carefully wrapping a small potted plant in bubble wrap. "That plant will die on a cross-country flight," he said from the doorway. Olivia looked up, her professional mask firmly in place. "I'll take my chances. Boston is a long way from Seattle." "That's rather the point," she replied, continuing to pack. Vincent stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. "What if I asked you not to go?" Her hands stilled. "Are you asking as my client or as something else?" "As a man who spent 10 years hiding from life because he was afraid of loss." Vincent moved closer. "As someone who finally understands that walls don't just keep pain out, they keep everything out." Olivia set down the plant, her expression cautious. "Vincent, I love you, Olivia." The words came out with surprising ease, as if they'd been waiting all along. "I love the way you see through me, challenge me, make me want to be better. I love that you care about the impact of your work, not just its success. I love that you didn't let me push you away without calling me on my fear." Tears gathered in Olivia's eyes. "You can't just say that and expect." "I don't expect anything. I'm just finally being honest with you and with myself." Vincent took her hands in his. "I don't want a head of organizational development. I want you in whatever capacity you want to be in my life. If that means you take another job, build your consultancy, teach at MIT, I'll support that. I'll fly to Boston every weekend if I have to." A tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. "Are you sure? Because I can't do halfway with you, Vincent. I won't be kept at arm's length or hidden away as your secret." "I'm sure." Vincent brushed the tear away with his thumb. "You were right, I've been using my past as an excuse to avoid risking my heart, but my parents and Eliza wouldn't want that for me. They'd want me to live, to love, to build something real, like Quinn Enterprises." Olivia asked with a small smile. "No," Vincent shook his head. "Something much more important, a life with you if you'll have me." For a moment, Olivia just looked at him, searching his face. Then she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I love you too, you stubborn, brilliant man." When their lips met, Vincent felt the last of his walls crumble. For the first time in a decade, he wasn't the lonely billionaire haunted by his past, but simply a man embracing his future. 3 years later, Vincent stood on the deck of their home overlooking Puget Sound, watching Olivia show their 6-month-old daughter, Eliza, the sailboats on the water. Olivia had ultimately declined MIT's offer, instead expanding her consultancy with Vincent's support and focusing on companies with humanitarian missions. The board had initially been shocked when Vincent announced their relationship, but any concerns about conflicts of interest were addressed when Olivia recused herself from further work with Quinn Enterprises. What couldn't be resolved was how fundamentally Vincent had changed, still driven and demanding, but more connected, more willing to delegate, more alive. As if sensing his gaze, Olivia looked up and smiled, the sunset painting her and their daughter in golden light. Vincent captured the moment in his memory, knowing with absolute certainty that this love, this family was what he had been building toward all along. The millionaire who had wanted to forget his past had found his future in the most unexpected place, an office doorway in the form of a consultant with perceptive green eyes who had refused to let him hide. And for that, Vincent Quinn would be eternally grateful.